Welcome to Afternoon Express with me, Palisa Dembe, and my amazing co-host, Zoraida Jardine. Now, research shows us that loneliness is on the rise and that a lack of human connection can be more harmful than your health, then obesity, then smoking, and even high blood pressure. So tonight, we'll be exploring the importance of human connection with clinical psychologist Sli Mbatha, and then we're cooling off with the South African under-18 ice hockey team. And of course, we're also going to be checking up with a young scholar that is doing a 109-kilometer charity ride on a unicycle. But first up, let us welcome back clinical psychologist Sli Mbatha, who will help us understand the importance of human connection and how these connections impact our emotional well-being. Welcome back to the loft, Sli.
Hi, Pali. Thank you for having me once again.
It's so important to have you on conversations like this because when you think of the month of February, people think of the month of love, whether it's family love, intimate love, or just connections with a pet or a furry friend. So when we look at the human connections, what is that and what is the importance of it?
Right. So human connection really is about the relationships that we have or the bonds that we form. And when we talk about that, we really want to think about the quality of the relationships as well, not just the quantity that you have. But these are so important because it really gives us a sense of who we are. I mean, we think about it, we even incorporate connection into language that we use. We say our nearest and dearest, you know, our loved ones. So it's really a very important part of who we are as human beings.
And it's also even more important, or rather you see its importance in when people put in their bios,
Yes.
I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a friend, I'm a daughter. And that completely speaks to not only your role in other people's lives, but just that connection. And how then does that then, Sli, affect or communicate to our overall well-being?
Well, it is very, very important for overall well-being. You know, we're not just talking connection with others around us, but it's first and foremost, I think, a connection with yourself that you have. So the way that it relates to well-being is that, in general, people who are well-connected tend to feel happier. They tend to feel more supported, more loved. You know, I mean, think about what happens if something really big happens during your day. The first thing most people want to do is, it's like, I need to tell somebody. So really that sharing aspect of connection is so important to who we are. So the more of these quality connections that we have, the better we function as human beings, the more resilient we are as well, because we feel that we belong somewhere and that we can share our victories and our struggles with people who can support us.
Trust me, I'm one of those. I cannot live life by myself. I'm always like, babe, you won't believe what happened. But we do live in a digital age. So a lot of people aren't able to have those physical and those human connections that we're speaking about. So how does then those connections digitally and online affect and contribute and influence how we form and maintain those human connections?
Right. Well, I mean, the online world is a bit of a double-edged sword. There are a lot of positives to the fact that we have social media, and it allows us to connect more easily with people than we ever have been able to before. So the fact that we can share our lives so easily, share our joys, our graduations, the ceremonies that we have, that's the really lovely aspect of it, and that we can do it quite easily and, you know, relatively cheaply too. The downside of that is that, you know, it can also, we really need to be careful about it because it can take us out of other real world connection. So we need to not be too distracted with the online, but I think that we can use online really to enhance what we have as a person-to-person
As to face-to-face. I love that. But on the other side of the coin, unfortunately, globally, stats have shown that between the ages of 18 and 30, that age group and that age range has the highest likelihood or highest statistics of suicide. And I can only attribute that or think to attribute that to isolation. So what advice would you have to people who are feeling isolated in a certain space or certain time of their lives?
Sure. Well, you know, isolation doesn't just have to do with the fact that you don't have people around you. You can feel quite isolated and lonely lonely, even if there are people with you. So the first thing I'll say is that it's very important to recognize that you're not the only person who is having these feelings, and it's really important to reach out. You need to tell somebody if you start to feel isolated, if you can see yourself withdrawing more and more. The irony of it is that once you do isolate, it feels safer and safer and easier just to stay there, just to kind of close the doors and stay away from everyone. So I think if you have that one person, it doesn't need to be many, it's just the one that you can send kind of your signal to, your go-to person. And if you can't speak to people around you, that you really seek help if you start to notice that, you know what, my isolated feelings are actually, they're starting to distress me now.
They're growing, but we do tend to put a lot of importance on human connections. But what other connections are we able to enjoy?
Sure. So I think this is the fantastic thing, and I'm so looking forward to all the things that you have on today's show.
Yes.
But the connections that we can form as human beings, we can relate to objects, we can relate to activities. So we can form a connection through music and the emotions that music gives us. You know, some of us need to cry to an album to get things out, and some of us, you know, it's like you want to celebrate and you want to hear your favorite song. So the music is really great. Animals are another really great point of connection. They just give that unconditional love. And, of course, our connection to food and how we gather around food.
Love that. Well, as we are building and connecting as people, we thank you so much, Sli Mbatha. But you're not just here for this conversation. We have you throughout the show to be able to continue to build and expand on this topic of connections. I love it for us. Now stay tuned, Mzansi, because Sli Mbatha will, as I've said, be providing some key tips that you can implement to avoid the feeling of loneliness and isolation.